tutorial, we're dyeing cotton, linen, and wool with cochineal. Cochineal is light and wash fast and produces a broad range of fuchsias, reds, and purples. 2 years ago, we dyed with cochineal insects and produced a rich fuchsia color. I saved the dye, so this will be the second extract. We'll use 2 dye baths, one for fabric mordanted with alum and the other with ferrous sulfate, or iron. Iron darkens or saddens color. For this project, you need basic dye equipment and a well-ventilated workspace. You need a soaking pot, a dye pot, a heat source, and a candy thermometer to maintain the dye bath at a consistent temperature. You'll also need the prepared dye, a gallon or 2 of distilled water, prepared cotton fabric. For safety, wear rubber gloves and a face mask. For each batch, we are dyeing both cellulose and protein fiber. The fiber has been scoured and mordanted with a gallnut mordant. The fiber has also been soaking in a mordant brightener to influence color outcome. 1 batch soaked in alum and soda ash. The WOF is used to calculate the proportions. The other batch soaked in iron and soda ash. Per MIWA, adding iron shifts the color towards purple, and adding alkaline, like soda ash, shifts the color toward deep fuchsia. Let's get started. We'll use the basic dye process. First, I combined all my stored jars of cochineal extract 2 from 2 years ago. I stirred to incorporate any sediment that had settled at the bottom of the jars. The pH for the combined cochineal dye is 7. After 2 years, the dye is still a deep, glossy fuchsia. A couple of the storage jars had a strong, rather unpleasant odor, but no deterioration of color. We'll see how potent the dye is. Pour the cochineal dye into the pan and turn on the heat. I'm using half a gallon of extract 2 for each half-pound batch. MIWA recommends using distilled water to control the pH when dyeing with cochineal. Out of curiosity, I tested the distilled water and our tap water. The pH for each is 6, so distilled water may not be needed here in the Bay Area. Add the pre-soaked prepared fabric to the dye bath without rinsing. Stir to loosen the fabric. Add water to cover. The pH for the combined dye and distilled water is 5 with alum mordant. The pH for the combined dye and distilled water is 9 with iron mordant. Bring the fiber to a simmer over the course of an hour. Then simmer the fiber for an hour, keeping the temperature between 170 and 180 degrees Fahrenheit. Continue to stir periodically for even dyeing, turning the fiber frequently while simmering. Turn off the heat and let the pan cool, leaving the fiber in the dye bath. I transferred the project to a bucket and started the second batch. To capture as much color as possible, I soaked both batches overnight. Squeeze out excess dye from the fabric, but save the dye bath for a third extract. Rinse the fabric in cool water until the water runs clear. Run the fabric through the washing machine's rinse and spin cycles without soap. I ran them separately to keep track of the dye batches. Let the fabric air dry. In a couple of weeks, run the fabric through the washing machine using Synthropol or professional textile detergent and rinse. Air dry again. For the alum mordant batch, the color is lovely pink. For the iron mordant batch, the color is a deeper lavender, which reminds me of the shades produced from logwood extract 2. The color also differs slightly between fabric types. As with logwood, the color distinction does not photograph well, at least with my setup, but it is more distinctive in person. In closing, the color produced by extract 1 has faded over the last 2 years, even though the fabric was stored away from the light. The color from extract 2 is less intense than the original extract 1. This is expected that the dye would become lighter with each extract. Plus, the dye is 2 years old. I'm pleased with the color results with Extract 2, and it's fascinating to see the range of colors produced across fiber types, even when basic variables are the same. Preserve the dye in a glass jar to use again. I'm marking the jar as Extract 3 for future projects. The dye color may be less intense, but it may still be usable, either for a lighter shade or mixed with another color. As always, there are more opportunities ahead to experiment.